Hey all, Sketch Parker here. I wanted to throw something together for newer players that may be having a hard time getting into Swords of Gurrah or having success. A lot of the things that I'll show you here may not be specifically relevant to Swords of Gurrah, but they are good fundamentals to have for anyone getting into any sort of martial weapon sparring. I'm by no means an expert at Swords of Gurrah, but I do have 3 years of martial weapons experience through hobbies, and I'd be happy to show you what I've learned that has helped me in Swords of Gurrah so far. So, to start, I'd like to say that it's very possible that people who have got Swords of Gurrah down will find that there's some of this that isn't exactly useful or relevant, or maybe contrary to the best practices. That's okay, it's expected. This is to give people the basic fundamentals, and it'll likely show you something that you might not have known to begin with. So let's first of all throw on the mirror. You can activate the mirror by using that button. I strongly recommend you do it. You should always know where you're leaving yourself open during your normal everyday actions in the game. Having a better understanding of where you are and what's exposed when you're performing certain motions is extremely important in dueling, and it'll do you a lot of solids. So go ahead and make sure you practice things in front of the mirror to see what it looks like from your enemy's perspective. So starting off on the easiest stuff, let's talk about sword and board, sword and a shield. First of all, I'm not going to go through the stuff that the tutorial module already said, because I'm sure everybody's already run through that, but I'm just going to dive right into some basic things. So let's talk about the shield real quick. It is a great shield. In real life, we would consider this to be a board, something that I could use to cover my entire body. In this game, not so much. We would consider this a buckler or punch shield. This is because the actual effective area is this metal piece right here, right? This metal piece is unbreakable, and it has saved my bacon so many times, whereas these blue sections, they're great. They self-heal, they prevent some damage, but not always. So they can't be relied on, and your objective is not to get hit. That is the most important thing. So if something breaks and then allows some damage through, you're not doing yourself any favors. It's great to have that damage mitigation. Think of it as a damage sink, but not your main level of defense. The reason I say punch shield is because you should be thrusting out. When you see somebody striking, it's an obvious strike and they're about to follow through, meet them. Okay? In any direction that it's coming, unless you have more people in front of you and you need to have a broader side of defense. If it's one person swinging at you, meet their weapon, break it, and go in. Next, let's talk about the sword-shield interaction. You always have to make sure these two never touch. If you do, you not only just wasted your opportunity of attack, you're also leaving yourself a little bit less protected. So you're always going to want to make sure that these two never touch and you're giving them a good berth between each other. It becomes very difficult in the 8 strokes, which I'll talk about in a moment. When you are swinging or holding your posture, always give a healthy amount of respect to the room in between you and your sword. If you need to be completely protected, you can do something like this, but always remember, give it clear berth anytime you maneuver around this. So let's talk about the 8 strokes really quick. So it's actually 7 strokes and a stab, but we'll just go through this really quick. So you've got down, side, side, 9 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and your uppers. You should be able to make all of those 7 movements easily. And not only do that, but also know how to go from one movement to the next. This is more important in real life than it is in Swords of Gurrah, but if you miss your shot in Swords of Gurrah and you need to follow up with an immediate strike, you need to know where they're exposed and how to get to that area as quickly as possible. So if I was to follow through, up, over, side, you practice making these movements and following up with another random stroke. The 8th stroke is the stab. It's just a straight in or straight up. Wherever you see that you can get in, even curling up and down is a useful and valid tactic. So, we'll talk about the sword and shield while you're doing the 8 strokes. You need to be able to go up and across without having this happen to you every time. You need to be able to move the shield in a position that you know will still protect you in some fashion from a riposte, while also giving you the opportunity to strike perfectly. These are only able to be done together, but I highly recommend you practice doing the strokes first and then figuring out how you can maneuver yourself. There's many different ways you can. If you're surrounded, it's not an unusual thing to put your sword behind and your shield behind you as you're making a complicated stroke. As long as there's somebody in that direction, you're still kind of covering yourself, but most of the time you want your shield in front of you in some fashion or at your sides. So we talked about the 8 strokes. We've talked about sword and board. Let's get rid of these guys. And we'll talk about something a little bit more fun. My personal favorite is polearms. I've always had a fancy for them. They're great. We're going to talk about things a little bit differently with polearms than we did with sword and board. Polearms are a completely different strategy, and you also have a completely different area of effect. Area of effect is important. But first, let's talk about postures and grip. So if I need to be able to do damage at a long range, I'm going to be using a posture that keeps me straight and forward and has the minimum amount of grip while providing the maximum amount of range. This is completely useless for defense, but if you have an ally in front of you keeping their focus, or maybe he has a board and he's providing cover for you, he can continue to do damage, and you can work the sides. You can work the sides, you can go straight down, and it's important to note that the same 8 strokes work with glaives and polearms, as assuming that they have a swing capacity, as the sword and board. So you're going to be going down, side, other side, up, be careful of the floor, up, and the side-to-side chops. Let's talk about area of effect really quick. Area of effect, my area of effect is very long, but it stops very abruptly. It stops right here. After this point, a glaive is useless when held in this posture. You cannot protect yourself and still provide a strike as soon as they are in this area. The important thing about defense is also being able to deliver blows. You are just going to be soaking up damage and being a waste of their time, which can be good, but being a waste of their time and yours by not being able to appropriately deal damage back because you're stuck in this posture. So as you're doing damage this direction, the important thing is to make sure they never reach out of your effective range. So you're going to be backpedaling. You're going to be backpedaling as much as possible while dealing as much damage as you can. They will eventually break your effective range. You need to know what to do at that time. You need to move very quickly from here to here. That's all it is, here to here. You're going to notice that I now hold my hands apart on either side. You can also hold it like this. You're going to need to know how to hold it in both this calibration and this calibration. You'll need to practice both. At this point, my minimum range is reduced. This minimum range may be useful for, let's say, a greatsword, perhaps another glaive, where there is some distance. There's a point where you're going to be face-to-face with them, and you may need to do something along these lines. Let's say a pair of daggers comes at you. You're going to have a heck of a time with pairs of daggers. Do your best to deflect them as much as possible from within your two hands. Your ability to parry is perfectly blocking between your two grip points, as far as I can tell. It's good practice to do anyway, because you should always be able to meet your point of strike with the target as it's coming in. The next important thing to know about is how to block. Blocking with a glaive is not anything like blocking with a sword and board or shield, obviously. Sword and board or greatsword, anything of the like. You're going to be imagining this to be a wall. This is literally becomes the wall between you and the incoming weapon, whether it be directly forward, this direction, and you'll notice I'm doing this weird thing where my arms are kind of cockeyed and out to the side. This is because too many people do this. And as you can see, my entire arm is exposed. This is gonna be damage. You're gonna take damage. Don't do this. Do this. You're gonna block on either side. From direct sides, you can straight up and down. If they start swinging low, you're gonna wanna do something called a broomstick. This is the broomstick. You're going to go from here to here, and you're gonna swing it back and forth and hope you can get in for that strike. The more you do this, the more your shield is going to break. If you hear your glaive regenerate and there's been enough time and you think you can strike, just do it and then go straight back to this and continue deflecting. There's a final thing we've shown you. So sword and board, great way to start. Glaive takes a little bit of practice, but it's a lot of fun. What if you wanted to do something a little bit more exotic? There's nothing wrong with a Phalanx roll. It works very well in this game. There's very few things that I haven't seen somebody be able to pull off. I've seen somebody throw daggers around, for God's sakes. You can use pretty much any strategy you can come up with as long as you can make it work. So things are going to be very different from sword and board with Phalanx roll. You have an amazing effective range. You're not going to be doing as much damage, but you have an effective range and you're providing cover for anybody behind you. There's a great intermediate unit. Think of someone who is directly on the side of a shield wall, who's a little bit further back, that can be providing that extra area of support. You're going to be wanting to do swift motions and watch your shield. The issue that you're going to have here is you can still provide watch the floor as well. All the 8 strokes still work here, and you just need to find a way that you can use it that will not interrupt your shield. Most of the time, if there's more than one person in front of you, you're going to be doing a very high series of strokes. That's an unfortunate restriction of this Phalanx roll. Another thing you should always keep in mind, you can't change your grip anymore unless you drop your shield, which is your main source of protection. As soon as they get inside that effective range, you're going to have problems. So let's talk about what to do in that situation. Well, the most immediate solution would be to have a reliable standby. Once somebody reaches your effective range and passes it, you're going to need to have a way of dealing with that threat, because you can't count on somebody being there to save your bacon. So let's say we're performing the strokes and somebody reaches inside. I need to immediately drop and pick up my sword. Don't worry about that. It's not worth it. Saving damage is more important than what weapon you're using. You can always pick it up later. If it disappears, don't stress. You can get another one later. It's always have the effective equipment for the job that you're undertaking, whether it be defending against people encroaching your personal space or providing DPS basically from behind a shield wall. I hope this helps, and I will see you all on the field.